exists to falsify the value of assets. An artificial impetus exists, likewise, to falsify earnings and creditworthiness. An artificial impetus exists even to multiply our unearned takings from each other, merely in the futile hope even to tread water against a yet inherent, irreversible, and therefore terminal multiplication of artificial indebtedness, which therefore inevitably manifests in terminal failure and dispossession. After all, the system before us is itself a system of illimitable unearned taking. For what then could we possibly think to simply outlaw some unearned taking? Our eyes, therefore, are not on the meat of the matter. If we focus on these downstream crimes, whilst the vital matter is the obfuscation of the currency, which tends so to manifest in all of this. Unless we rectify the improprieties of the present obfuscation of our promissory obligations to each other, then, in fact, we can succeed in nothing meaningful but ensuring our inevitable dispossession and failure.
Both times they trot out very prominent First Amendment lawyers and argue that when we say something is rated AAA, that is merely our opinion. You shouldn't rely on it.
How far can we abandon principle? What would we be licensing here but a purposed obfuscation of the truth, meant even to deceive anyone who referred to these ratings, purported ratings, for any possible reason. This is why there is the real matter here is enforceability of the truth. If it isn't incumbent upon anyone who is manipulating an economy to affect the economy solely by the truth, what are we ever going to have but criminal offenses against ourselves? What quarter can we possibly give to purported lawyers who simply are arguing for an abandonment of principle? This is preposterous that we even do these things. They're a disgrace to ourselves. Nonetheless, an equally important matter here is that regardless of these ratings, all of these things are going to fail because of the underlying obfuscation of the currency. Because the obfuscation of the currency, which obfuscates our promissory obligations to each other, which natural obligations are only to pay and retire principal from circulation. This obfuscation, being as it obfuscates our obligation to pay principal out of circulation and retire principal, which is thus the property of no one, being as this is laundered first into an artificial, falsified debt to the purported central banking system, which no more than publishes evidence of our promissory obligations to each other, and which only absorbs the negligible costs of publication. And because this obfuscation thereupon further imposes interest, regardless of the fact that all that is given up is the negligible cost of publication, and that no debt even exists to the central banking system. This is the cause of perpetual multiplication of artificial indebtedness, which is driving the needs to do all these things in hopes to outstretch the system. Because this is a cause of inevitable failure, all these things are going to fail anyway. Why are they selling these debts? Because they can't be collected. Why are they doing this clever thing of repackaging them as bad debts, which are ostensibly AAA rated. All these things are consequences of the obfuscation of the currency in conjunction with the attitude and disposition which prevail in its wake, which is to abandon principle in all of our endeavors and to outdo each other in unearned taking from each other so that we ourselves might survive the system.
S&P's ratings express our opinion.
Our ratings are our opinions. They're opinions.
Opinions, and they are just opinions.
I think we are emphasizing the fact that our ratings are our opinions.
They do not speak to the market value of a security, the volatility of its price, or its suitability as an investment.
But what at all of the far larger fact that all these debts are inherently and inevitably made bad at the terminal failure of the system precipitated by the underlying obfuscation of the currency.
We have so many economists coming on our air and saying, oh, this is a bubble and it's going to burst and this is going to be a real issue for the economy. Some say it could even cause a recession at some point.
Of course, the real issue here is why the news media ever relies on purported economists for their opinions, especially when their opinions are so broad as to be represented by mutually exclusive polls. Why does the news media restrict its purported coverage of news to purported experts who basically prove their ineptitude by wearing the badge of a mere pseudoscience which is wholly bereft of formal proof and theorem? This lie of economics, or the lie of economy, the central banking systems which have been imposed upon the world purposely without our assent, exist by nothing but deception. Deception which is readily negotiated. From the beginning, it was imposed upon us despite political promises to the contrary. It was passed by Congress on the eve of December 23rd in the absence of so many who opposed it. When it caused the first global depression, promising to prevent the things it could only cause, what economist ever stood up against it? Well, in truth, a few men did. But they did not do so by irrefutable proof that it in no way could it possibly serve us. And this is the real problem here. In the end, after this thing, this monstrosity, this abomination, launders all principle into its own possession, multiplies that into terminal artificial indebtedness the first time a mere 15 years into its existence. And now again, in the second life cycle of a system which has merely been renewed by allowing creditworthiness, where creditworthiness was destroyed by the system itself, in this second lifespan, why are we depending on these people who constantly pretend to redeem themselves by, after being proven wrong in the lies they themselves ignorantly perpetrated upon us, by resorting to other economists from the opposite pole? What integrity exists in this whatsoever? Why are these people doing this? Because this entity which launders principle into its possession and then multiplies that into terminal dispossession can afford to own the entire media and to influence it, our government, and ourselves in such ways as we could never find the truth amidst any of the lies that they parade before us constantly.
What is the worst case scenario if, in fact, we were to see prices come down substantially across the country?
Well, I guess I don't buy your premise. It's a pretty unlikely possibility. We've never had a decline in house prices on a nationwide basis.
Ben Bernanke became chairman of the Federal Reserve Board in February 2006, the top year for subprime lending. But despite numerous warnings, Bernanke and the Federal Reserve Board did nothing.
Bernanke, of course, is not one of the good guys. Nonetheless, the danger of presuming that the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board could do something about bad debts is preposterous because, and I mean no offense to Matt Damon, I have the greatest respect for him, the idea that's preposterous about the perspective that you're limited to when you deny yourself this understanding that any purported economy subject to interest inevitably terminates itself, that this process of terminal failure is a consequence of a purposed obfuscation of the currency, which launders all principle into the falsified, unwarranted possession of a purported central banking system, and then multiplies that into terminal debt and dispossession. Without that understanding, we're likely to think what Matt has just made a complaint of. The problem is that there is no power to avert this degradation, so to speak, of indebtedness, because the obfuscation of the currency itself is responsible for making debts ever less plausible to meet the requisites of, that is, of servicing them, as it imposes all this further escalation of artificial indebtedness upon us. The whole reason that we can only maintain a vital circulation by federal overspending is that we are unable, our creditworthiness in the private sector is already so exceeded that we can't maintain a vital circulation by further borrowing ourselves. We're already in terminal failure, and under terminal failure, all debts go bad. They don't just go bad because of some obscure reason. They go bad because of a underlying root cause, which is this obfuscation of the currency, which perpetually multiplies artificial indebtedness upon us in such a way that we're eventually unable to service our debts. This is why they go bad. They can only go bad, they can only fail, and in the end, we're dispossessed of all our production by an entity which in fact produces nothing.
Robert Gneizda met with Ben Bernanke and the Federal Reserve Board 3 times after Bernanke became chairman.
Only at the last meeting did he suggest that there was a problem and that the government ought to look into it.
When was that? What year?
It's 2009, March 11th in D.C.
This year?
This year we met, yes.
And so for the 2 previous years you met him, even in 2008?
Yes.
Of course, chairman is a PR position. All it's about is perpetuating the lie, perpetuating the deceptions. They, of course, want us to believe that everything is just fine, that they can rescue this thing, that we're actually in recovery, when in fact we're unwitting subjects of an ever escalating